Those of you on the floor, I'm sure you'll be able to find a seat now. I think there's a few who might have gone, is there? I don't know, still coming in, so we'll just wait. Is there any more outside?
Yeah.
You outside?
Yes, taking a leak there.
Two. There were quite a few that had a little knee-jerk reaction to there is no reincarnation statement that I made earlier.
Tough one.
A tough one for some, yeah.
Tough one to digest.
Yeah. This is something we found last week too, and this is why we talked to a spirit who believed in it, and he talked about his own experience. So when we do get those recordings up, you have a chance to listen to those as well. Okay, where are we next? Okay. Very good. Can I say participation? Very good. Thank you. Let's start here, right here. Yep, first.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay. I would like to know more about, you said that you're only half of your soul and the other soul is somewhere else. So where is the other soul, and can I feel bad if my soul, parts of my soul are somewhere else? And how to take care of that connection.
That's right. They're all good questions, aren't they? It's like it's funny.
And can I also add,
yeah.
How can I protect myself from spirits to interfere with my other part of my soul?
I think they appreciate your question. I think they're laughing because they think, they want to know too.
They want to know too, yeah. They're all good questions. Okay. They're all good questions. So let's...
And they also laugh because he's a bit of a joker.
Yeah. So I'm not making fun of you, I'm just... very right. You see, the thing about receiving one truth is that it opens a gateway to go, but what about this, and what about that, and what about this, and what about that? And if you're not careful, sometimes you can end up feeling like barrage with so many questions that we don't take a methodical way of sort of working our way through those questions. Does that make sense? So with all truth, it's very important that we sort of methodically go through it. And I know initially many people feel, but that's not the question I asked when I start answering them. But there's a reason why I do that. It's because I need to take you on a little journey, if you like, understanding some fundamental principles, so that in the end, when I give the answer to the question, that you've got some understanding, even intellectually, of the answer. Make sense to you? So that's what I'm going to do now. The human soul. It begins in a state where it is not conscious of itself. So it's, in other words, it's not self-aware. So at this point, I'm saying it is not self-aware. All right? This sort of, it has a construct. So let's say it has let's say it's dominantly male, let's say. In your case, probably what I should do is answer it for your case, right? You know it's not dominantly male, don't you? What is it for you?
I am looking for a man.
Yes.
And I'm female.
Yes. Yes. Now, I can't double check on any of those things, but I do know that's true. Yeah. So yes, so that's the soul, but it's not self-aware. It is yet to become aware of its own existence. It's yet to become aware of how to use its will. It's yet to become aware that it's actually half male, half female. It's yet to become aware of these substantial things that it will become aware of in the future. In order to become aware, it has to have one thing happen, and that is it has to get injected into an experience in order to become aware. And the way it gets injected into experience is that half of the soul, and one half happens for one half first, where half of the soul connects to, and this is an instinctual process at this point, it connects to two bodies that have been created for it by the parents of that child having sex and conceiving a child. Shortly after the time of conception, it's actually just a few milliseconds actually after the moment of conception, usually a soul connects to the bodies. In fact, these bodies can't survive the womb without a soul connected to them. So a soul must connect in order for the bodies to survive. So you've got a spirit body that gets created at the time of conception and a physical body. They both have genetic structure, so they both have genetics, and the genetics are very similar, because if you passed and your spirit body was not the same looking as what you were when you were in your life and your physical life, you imagine how confusing that would be, right? So God's made it so that it's not confusing when you pass. You still, if you saw yourself in a mirror, you'd recognise yourself, maybe with a few changes in terms of how young or old you look, but you'd substantially recognise yourself, right? And the same applies, of course, so at some point afterwards, this half of the soul will also go through the same instinctual process. So this one's girl bodies, spirit body, physical body. Now you can see from that diagram the soul itself is not separating. The soul itself is still one soul, but now there's bodies connected to it. But remember at the beginning, the soul didn't know that it had this dual nature. So it hasn't learnt, by the time you incarnate, so the time you're born, you still don't know that you have a dual nature, that there's another half of yourself somewhere, right? And God has done that so that you don't miss them, because otherwise, if you knew, this separation process would mean you'd arrive with a lot of grief about missing them. So at this point, you're not self-aware, so there's nothing to miss. Does that make sense? Okay. So at this point, though, from the time of conception onwards, what generally happens is on Earth, most people don't really believe in soulmates. In fact, they have a very loose feeling about there is a partner for me out there somewhere. Some people feel like there's a perfect partner for them somewhere. Other people feel like, oh no, it's one of 100, people. I could just, oh yeah, Mary looks good, I'll go for her, but Nettie looks good too. I don't know, maybe I'll go for her too. That kind of feeling. And, and in that process, they don't understand that, no, there is just one. There is just one person there for you. Now, when you're not self-aware, which is in the state before this incarnation process occurs, then of course it doesn't matter to you. But as soon as you start becoming self-aware, and God triggered your self-awareness by introducing a number of things into the bodies. And one of those things was hormones. The whole design of the hormonal system is not just for you to mature into sexual maturity, but it's actually for you to mature into desiring someone else to be a part of your life. Right? So God designed some physical things in the bodies to trigger the soul into some level of awareness. Right? But also what happens is the majority of people on Earth are not generally very open to the concept of having another half designed by God, not by you, not your selection, but God's selection. And there's a lot of reasons why they're not open to that. One of them is most people want to make it self-determining. Like they want to, when it comes to the other half of themselves, they want to be able to select. They want to go, no, no, yes, no, no, yes, no, and then choose the best of all those yeses. And that's who I have a relationship with, that kind of thing. A lot of people want that. And so they're very against the idea, of course, that there is this inclination in the soul. But if you talk to most children, it's very interesting. Because usually by the time of 7, they feel there is just another one half of themselves. themselves. And it's during 7 to teenage life that they lose that connection generally, right, with that concept or idea. Anyway, so here we are. We've got this soul. It's incarnated now. So the process of incarnation is conception, and both halves have to be conceived. So when one is conceived, the other half stays, you could say, stays near that first half, following it around, spiritually speaking, following it around, and then looking also instinctually, so it's not a choice, it's an instinct, waiting for someone else in that similar region, wherever the first one incarnated into, waiting for someone else in the similar region to incarnate into in the opposite, in this case, gender. But if it was a predominantly male soul, it'd be both male bodies, wouldn't it? And if it was a predominantly female body, female soul, it'd be both female bodies. But they're still following them around, waiting to incarnate into a similar region, because God's design is that eventually you find each other. Right? So when both of them, you could say, when the first one, incarnates, you could say that the process of incarnation is not yet complete, but it has begun. And the process of individualization, which is the process of you working out you are an individual, long word, is also begun. When the second half of the soul incarnates, those two processes are complete. So as soon as the second half of the soul is conceived, you could say for that one soul, the whole process of individualization and incarnation is now complete. Right? If both of them die, even if they're in the womb, it actually doesn't matter. So let's say they were a miscarriage. They were both miscarried, let's say. Well, the process of incarnation has completed and individualization has also completed. They will arrive with a spirit body in the spirit world. They'll be taken by a spirit and nursed just like they would be on earth until they grow up and become an adult. Does that make sense? So as soon as the process of incarnation and individualization is done, then from that moment on, they have an experience. So the purpose of this is to give you an experience. And it's not only, you can think of it as, it's giving the whole soul an experience. But in order for this soul to work out who it is and what what its inclinations are, it's going to have a female, in this case, a female experience and a male experience. It's going to have both sets of experiences. In order for the complete soul to understand itself, it also has to come to terms with its own desires and its own passions and its own longings, and what does it want out of life, and what are its goals? What is the things that it would like to do? What are the things that bring it life? You can see some people, can't you, on earth, they're really passionate about what they do, and then other people are like, don't really care about anything, Now, obviously, the people who don't really care about anything have not yet engaged the passion of their soul. They haven't yet worked out what it is they want to do. And then you see with other people, they're just acting in addiction all the time. So they're enthusiastic about their addictions, and they just do that, but they still don't really know themselves very well. So they haven't yet worked themselves out. The goal of this process is to do this, to become self-aware. Now, part of you becoming self-aware is knowing the other half of you. That's a part of you becoming self-aware, because you are not complete without the other half of you. Now, I'm not saying that you're not able to do whatever it is you want to do. In fact, in reality, to find the other half of you, you need to do you, like with gusto, with passion, right? You need to learn who you are and be that person. And if you're the feminine half of the soul, you need to be strong, feminine woman doing you. You follow me?
Yes.
Yep. You need to really understand that me being a woman is a part of the important part of your whole soul working itself out. Just like the other half of your soul, him being a man is the same. Like if he's just listless, doesn't do anything, doesn't create anything, then he's not learning how to be him, like the masculine expression of your soul. And so both of you are learning how to be you. Now, of course, the average person on earth doesn't understand this because nobody on earth educates about this. And there's all sorts of really confusing concepts and ideas that are presented about reincarnation and other things which actually affect people's understanding of this. There's also sometimes spirit influence affecting the understanding of this. There's also things like, if a person doesn't really do them like with passion, then you can get influence from all sorts of people pushing you around and getting, and usually the first people that start pushing you around are your mum and dad, unfortunately. So oftentimes mum and dad are going, I want you to be what I want you to be. Like if I'm your dad and I go, and I was good at sport, I want you to be good at sport. I want you, what's a favourite sport of mine? Oh, netball or something for a woman. You got to do netball, let's say I'm a musician as a father and I'm going, I'd like my daughter to be a musician, so I push her in that direction, but I don't educate her in science or art or mathematics or other things, then fundamentally she is not going to be having experiences which allow her to work out who she is rather than who I say she is, right? So this is a primary way in which parents damage children, is that they are trying to impose on the child what the parent says they should be, right? So these things happen, and the problem with that happening is it creates this sort of effect. It creates the effect where you start to feel like this. A separation starts to occur. A feeling-based separation starts to occur between you and your other half. And this separation occurs through lots of reasons. Firstly, there's a set of beliefs that you may have that the other half doesn't have. So you might believe in reincarnation, but he might be a Christian. You might believe in reincarnation, but he's Islamic, right? You can see the separation of beliefs is going to create a soul-based conflict, emotional-based conflict now between the two halves. So this is why beliefs matter. Because if the beliefs are not true, you're going to create separation between the two halves of the soul, right? Then there's also things like your emotions that create separation. An example is, let's say you become unduly attached to your father and he becomes unduly attached to his mother. This is very common on earth nowadays, and we see it all the time. We were travelling in Austria, and there were literally a man and his girlfriend, and the man's holding his mum's hand walking, and the girlfriend is like, what's she there for? She's obviously there for the sex, right? Because he's not developing a relationship with her, he's got a relationship with his mother, right? So we saw another one where the guy took off a jumper and mum took it, put it around her waist. He puts on a shirt, mum gives him the shirt. She gets it out of her bag, gives him the shirt. So she's carrying everything for him. Now, what do you think that girl's going to feel? Being with this guy is going to be like, you've got a relationship with your mum. There's a very damaged relationship in that regard. So emotions cause this feeling of separation between the two halves. You will have beliefs that he won't have. You will have emotions he won't have. Right? Now, obviously, also you might have addictions. So in other words, let's say you're addicted to your father. Like your father's your best friend. Does that give another male in your life the ability to be your best friend? No, your father is. So the addiction would be with your father. Now, let's say with him, his addiction is my mum's my best friend. So that's now your addictions and his addictions are completely opposite to each other. Right? That's going to cause problems too. Now, a part of you becoming self-aware is working through your beliefs and making sure they're true. Working through your emotions and making sure you get rid of any emotions that are damaging to you and you embrace emotions that are good for you, like joy, love, truth, all good things. About getting rid of anything that causes your addictions so that they don't interfere with you joining with your other half. And on top of that, starting to understand your personality. The interesting thing is that the beliefs, you are responsible for developing. Emotions, you are responsible for developing. Addictions, you're responsible for getting rid of. But personality, God created. That's a part of your nature. That's a part, something you're going to have to become self-aware of, right? The personality, if you can engage your personality and start to understand yourself, what is your personality, this is a great way of finding the other half of you. Because if you know your own personality, you know it well, then of course whenever you meet the other half of you, they are going to have the same personality. And if you're self-aware, even if he's not, you'll recognise your personality in them. It's like you come to some awareness of yourself, and then it's like you meet the other half of yourself, and so you can recognise yourself in the other half, right? Without developing personality. And it's not really developing personality, is it? It's becoming aware of what it is and being it more. Being it more.
It's loving it, isn't it?
It's loving it and being it more. Now, if you develop your beliefs in harmony with love and truth, and you develop your emotions in harmony with love and truth, and you get rid of your addictions, because that would also be in harmony with love and truth, and you embrace your personality rather than condemning it. You see, your parents might have condemned it, so your parents might not like the person you are. Or people at school, as you're growing up, might not like who you are, so you start changing your personality to suit everybody. That's not good for you, right? So you wouldn't do that. You would engage your personality. As you do that, what happens is any seeming barriers, and this is only an illusion, seeming barriers, the barriers are caused by the differing beliefs, the differing emotions, the differing addictions, the lack of recognition of your personality. That's what causes the barriers. All right? So if you can come along and rub out the barriers, can you see the net result is you are going to be closer to the point where you'll actually meet them.
But then he needs to do his job as well at the same time.
Of course.
So
And what if he isn't?
Yeah.
It's highly likely he's not, right? Yeah. See, if we were educated about this at a young child, like let's say you went to school, the very first thing you learnt was about love, the next thing you learned about was truth, the next thing you learned about was humble, next thing you learned about was faith, next thing you learned about was how the soul was created. All good. Yeah. But how many of that's happened? How has that happened to many of you? No. So it's like, how do I work out all these things? Well, a lot of it's by following your emotions, isn't it? Because, as I said, there are certain physiological functions of your body that start getting triggered, and they get you thinking about these things. And most people on Earth, when they start thinking about something, they don't sort of think of it as a actual law governing it, or that God's got this under control. They sort of think, oh, I didn't know about that. That is probably true. I need to experiment with that. That's sort of the way it is. But you imagine if the whole world was educated about this by the time they were 6, which would be the ideal, right? then of course everyone could start engaging their emotions, they're dealing with their addictions, their beliefs. You imagine by the time you're a teenager and you're developing sexually, you'd already have, your personality. We know some 12-year-olds who are very much connected to their personality, and they're really showing their personality a lot as a result. But they have learnt about this from the time they were 4. So they've had that opportunity. So this is something that needs to change. We need to give everybody this opportunity. But once you know this, and it doesn't matter what age you know this, because from the time you start knowing this, I've got to sort out my beliefs, I've got to sort out my emotions, I've got to deal with my addictions, and I've got to be who I am, my personality. And once you start realising that, and you bring all of that into harmony with what is loving for you, right? And that's what is loving for everyone is loving for you, with the exception of, with your personality, that's going to be very specific to you. God designed every person who's ever existed to be completely different from everyone else. So that's going to be very specific to you. So my personality, completely different to yours. Mary and mine, identical. You and your soulmate, identical. Just male body, female body, identical with regard to your personality. The more you can do that, the more you'll recognise it in someone else. But as you've correctly said, he at some point has got to learn to do the same thing. That's a problem. Because you have no control over him doing that. I know many of you would like control over him doing that, but you have no control over him doing it. Of course, you can pray to God, can't you, to help him do that, so that you can eventually meet. You can long to God to help him out, which of course God wants to do already, but your longing to God just makes, like, by longing to God, you're saying, I want to meet him. Help me meet him, that kind of thing, right? So your longing to God helps you do that. And of course, there's reasons why you might not long to meet him. Like you might go, but what if he's in jail?
Well, exactly what you said is one reason why you might not want long to meet him, because you think, I'll do all that work on myself and then I'll meet him, and then it'll be like,
Then it'll be like,
he doesn't want to love me.
He hasn't done any of it. So what's that going to look like? Yeah. He hasn't got any of his beliefs in harmony with God's. He hasn't got any emotions sorted out. He's got all of his addictions in play. Let's say he likes relationships with multiple women, and that's one of his addictions. That's going to be tricky, isn't it? When you've already opened up to the fact that he is yours, it's going to be tricky. You're going to have to work through these issues if you do meet in love. But you might even meet if he doesn't do it. You might not even meet, right? Although what I've found through experience and through our own experience, only requires one half to do it in order to meet, but it requires both halves to do it in order to be connected. Right, so quite frequently we see people meet. Mary and I have watched people meet. There's even a few meetings that have been going on recently that we've seen, not here, but elsewhere. And we see the meeting and we go, what's going to happen here? And they didn't even notice each other at all. At all.
We can feel they got the exact same
They've got
personality.
the same personality, but they haven't connected to their own personality. They haven't sorted out some of their beliefs and emotions. So we see them meet, and it's sort of like, you can see there is actually, from a spirit perspective, there's this bright rose-coloured, just looking if any of you have the colour, no, but it's bright rose sort of colour connection between the soul halves. But when I say bright, if it's in a very separated state, it's like a very tiny, it's like a string, thin. It's like a nylon string, just tainted slightly with that brightness. And so for most spirit people in the spirit world, they can't even see it. That's how, sort of small the connection is. Oftentimes when, because of all sorts of issues that I've just listed. The key is to get that connection brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter to the point where you feel like this one person.
Will I meet him in the spirit world regardless? Is that a law that you always
guaranteed,
meet?
yeah. In fact, most people meet their soulmate in the 5th sphere as a spirit world, not on Earth. For a lot of reasons.
Well,
it's mostly because of these reasons, actually.
Some of them meet on Earth, but they don't recognise
Yeah.
each other. God designed it for you to meet,
To meet on Earth.
So that's the whole secret, to meet your other half and be self-aware on Earth.
I don't think it's the whole secret of life. The whole secret of life is firstly to have a relationship with God, then to do these things. So that's the whole secret of life, but that's the secret that most people neglect. The relationship with God is great to have that first. There are certain things that can't happen with the soul union unless you have God in the union.
And a lot of people focus on finding their other half in whatever way they want to say that, without first sorting themselves out, being themselves fully. And the reality is God designed it that you're not going to get on with your other half until you sort yourself out.
And even then, the other half might not get along with you.
Yeah.
So then they've got to sort themselves out.
But I can guarantee if you sort yourself out, pretty much, and you love your personality, you might meet your other half and they might be full of addiction, full of emotion, really rejecting their personality.
You still see them.
You're gonna catch their eye.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because the soul feels an attraction.
Yeah.
One issue though on Earth: every abortion and every miscarriage automatically means you're not going to meet them while you're on Earth. So this is an issue that is a big issue on Earth now, is that there are a lot of miscarriages and abortion on Earth for lots of different reasons. All of them are generally unloving and can be fixed, but unfortunately there's nearly 200 million children dying every year now through abortion, miscarriage, and then just children dying by the time of age 5. Now, if you add up that number of people, that's a lot of people who are not going to meet their soulmates on Earth. They'll meet their soulmates in the spirit world, but not on Earth, right? Because of the human condition, human sin. So one thing, if you're going to have children, one thing you need to start doing is start working on the same problems, so that you don't consider having an abortion, for example, or because there's emotional reasons why we consider such things. These things all damage the potential of meeting your soulmates on Earth. But for a fair portion of people, usually more than half of people will meet their soulmates even on Earth, but almost every one of them won't recognise them because of this problem. Yeah. It's very rare to, like I said, I don't think I've seen anybody meet on Earth and recognise the other half in the whole time I've been alive on Earth, this life and also in the first century. But every one of them meets sometime in the spirit world, even if they don't connect to God, actually. By the time they're in the 6th sphere, generally they do meet their soulmates, even if there's no connection with God. So, that was half of your question, isn't it? It's like, and you're disappointed with the answer.
Am I?
Well, no, because of the other half thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're disappointed with that, yeah? Yeah, it's sort of like, well, I can do my business. I can make my progress, but how do I get him to do it? Like, well, I've seen some people do some pretty bad things trying to get the other half on the road.
As soon as you're trying to get the other half to get them on the road, you really haven't done your work.
You haven't done your work, yeah.
Because really, your ultimate happiness is in soul union. But if you do the work to love your personality and deal with your stuff, you're going to be a pretty happy person.
Yeah, you won't need other people to make you happy.
You're going to have no demands on anybody else, even your soulmate. Yeah.
You won't need somebody to love you in order to feel secure in your life. You won't need to have somebody love you to make you feel complete, right? Which is actually an addiction. You won't need all of that. This is why it's good for people to have an alone time in their life to work themselves out, to work out who they are, type of thing. Yeah. But this other half of the problem is an issue, isn't it? Yeah. So let's face the emotions associated with this other half of the problem. assuming, of course, that you do all of this, which is a big assumption, perhaps, but let's say you do, right? Then we've got to address this thing here, this other half of the problem, right? How do I do that? It's a good question, isn't it? How do I help the other half of my soul to recognise me? Is really the question, isn't it? Can you see if you don't do these things, and particularly this thing, it's going to be very hard for them to feel you? Can you see that? It's going to be very hard for them to know who you are if they can't recognise you when they first see you. Now, if you are doing that and you've done these things, they will be drawn into your life. And when I say drawn, I mean physically, they will eventually meet you. They will be drawn into your life. Now what happens? Well, if you've done all these things, you'll recognise them probably straight away. And it won't be a sexual feeling, and it won't be a needy feeling, and it won't be a like instant love feeling. It'll just be a recognition. There's my other half. I can see him. He's got the same personality as I have. It's buried under a whole heap of stuff, but it's there. And you'll recognise them. The problem now becomes how you act when you recognise them. Can you see that? Let's say you decide, I'm going to make him be mine now. Right? I'm going to do what I need to do to force the issue. Right? Now that would already indicate, wouldn't it, that you haven't dealt with addictions. So that's already a problem. But naturally now you'd be acting in the addiction. Not very good. It's not going to end good when you act in addictions. So you'd have to deal with your addictions. So when I met Mary, I recognised her straight away. In this life, in the first century life too, actually, I recognised her straight away. And in this life. In the first century life, I knew she was out there and I knew she was still alive. I knew that I'd meet her. I knew that if I just proceeded with sorting out myself and progressing myself, that I'd meet her. And also, spirits told me I'd meet her as well, sooner or later. But when I did meet her, I didn't go up to her and say, Mary, you're mine. Come with me. Let's get married. Let's have kids. Force her into the life I was leading. I was leading, at that stage, a life where I was teaching people. It was a pretty hard life. I knew I was going to die within a couple of years. I was aware of that because of how angry people were around me all the time. So I knew I was going to die. And I had to contemplate, well, what's it going to be like for her to meet me, and then within me, a few years of meeting me, I die, and then what's going to happen to her, So I had to feel about all those things as well, work my way through all of that in the first century. In this life, it was more like, as soon as I saw her, it took me, I lived for 5 years by myself before I met Mary, dealing with a lot of my addictions and my emotions and my beliefs before I met her. As soon as I met her, I saw who she was. And you'd think, tell her, right? Well, I didn't. Mary's a bit annoyed that I didn't, but there was reasons why I didn't. I didn't want to force her into to have anything to do with me. If I wanted her to feel her way with me. Does that make sense? Rather than, and all I wanted to do is try to have some time in her company at times, if I could, and then let her feel her way with me. As it turned out, other people told her who they felt. Other people worked out from my demeanour that I'd met my soulmate, because I had a feeling of more, I don't know, just more calm, I suppose, just knowing who she was. So other people noticed that. They go, what's up with you? I don't know if I want to share with them, but eventually they were persistent, so I told them, I've met my soulmate. And then they start, other people start, who's he seen lately? Like, you've seen this girl, yeah. And then they run off and tell, not Mary, but Mary's mum and dad. Right. But that wasn't my intention. My intention was, I knew who she was now. Now I was thinking, well, how can I meet up with her somehow without forcing myself upon her in any way? You know, forcing her to be in my company. So I was pondering about that. And then Mary got told, and then I went overseas actually after that, so I didn't get to see Mary. My plan was to try and, Mary's intention I could feel was to go back to Lebanon. She was an aid worker in Lebanon, and I thought on my way back home I'll pop in on Lebanon, you know, like say hello to Mary, see what happens, you know. That was what I was thinking. But as it turned out, her mum and dad said something to Mary, and then Mary went through her own experience, which she can share with you at some point, not now probably, and where she sort of felt like she recognised me as well. But even though that took place, she didn't contact me, and I didn't contact her, and eventually I got an email from her, just a one-liner it was. What's up, sort of thing. Like, why do you think I'm your soulmate? And that was it. Just one line. Just, hi, I think it was AJ. Why do you think I'm your soulmate?
Wasn't exactly that, but it was.
My mum and dad told me your soulmate,
no,
or something like that. I can't remember
yeah,
that.
I heard.
I
think
that's
something.
Right. I heard
about
that you think I'm a soulmate.
I want to know from you.
I want to know from you.
Yeah.
Do you think that? That was it. Nothing else. So I'm looking at this thing, you know, what do I say? Everyone around me is saying, don't say too much. You'll put her off you know, like, and I'm going, but I know how the soul's constructed. I've got to do some pretty bad things to put her off me. Right? As long as I sort out these things and be myself, she'll feel more like connected to me. So I write her a 12-page reply. Yes, I do think you're my soulmate. This is the reason why I think you're my soulmate, you know, and a few other things. In 12 pages, obviously. So I send off this email. Don't hear anything from Mary for a while. So, and everyone's saying to me, because I was travelling with a group of people at the time, they said, you've done it. You've scared her off. You know? And I said, it's impossible to scare her off. If I'm living in harmony with truth, which is one of the core tenets that I'm teaching you, right? And I'm being truthful, and I'm being truthful in harmony with God's truth, impossible to put her off. The time when I'll put her off is if I lie, I obfuscate, I don't live in harmony with truth, or I feed my addictions. Then I'll put her off.
Well, that was my problem. That was my first problem. That you hadn't been truthful with me. You'd told other people and not me, and I was upset.
Yeah.
As soon as you told me, I was like, okay, well now we can talk about things.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So the more truthful I was, the more Mary felt like, oh, I want to talk about this now. And then, of course, I said, well, I'm overseas, you're in Australia, what do we do about that? So we talked on the phone for some months first, and, you know, they were pretty expensive phone calls. But I was in Barbados at the time and talking to a group of people there about God's truth, and it just proceeded from there, right? So what I learnt and what I knew through this process was that as long as I was living in harmony with truth, as long as I was living in harmony with love, as long as I dealt with my own addictions, as long as I was myself, Mary at some point would be attracted to that. Now, there are times when I was myself and Mary initially had a terrible reaction to it. Like, she's saying to me, like, you saying you're Jesus, I've got a major problem with that, right? So Mary spent quite a lot of that time in our first part of our relationship trying to convince me I wasn't Jesus, right? You try that for a while, like, how long did that go on for? Maybe 3 years?
Yeah.
Something like that. Where Mary was trying to convince me that I wasn't Jesus. Now, by this stage, I knew who I was, right? So pretty confident. But I can understand Mary's feelings because I wasn't at the when I had all of my memories and went through all my experiences. It felt pretty overwhelming, and I could feel that's what she was avoiding, going through the same experiences. And in fact, what triggered her to feel this way was she had this terrible experience one day when myself and Cornelius were speaking, and Mary just went through this really bad experience of just overwhelmed with emotion, crying constantly all the way through our conversation. We weren't talking to her, we were talking to a group of people, but Mary was in the back listening. And it was so overwhelming emotionally for her that she just felt like, no, I don't want any of this anymore. And so I didn't see her for nearly, was it 4 months after that? Something like that?
Probably.
Yeah.
6 months maybe.
Maybe 6 months, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
But I had to work through things.
What I found was I hadn't done any work on myself before I met Jesus. I had a lot of beliefs, a lot of emotions, a lot of addictions that were out of harmony with me being myself, that were a product of my upbringing, really, in this life. But meeting him, that's why I said, if you do the work on yourself, you'll certainly catch your soulmate's eye. Because even though in my upbringing I had really decided my personality was the problem, I had decided me being me is what caused everyone else to be upset, so I've just got to shut that down as much as possible and be what everyone else around me wants. That's how I was living my life at that point. So obviously avoiding a lot of pain and emotion about that. But Jesus being our personality held some attraction to me. But then, of course, I would be drawn to him, and then he would be our personality, and then I would say, that's the problem, stop, because that was what was in me. But it did start me on this process where I felt like I'm quite drawn to this, but also it brings up all of my stuff. I'm quite drawn to this, but it brings up all of my addictions. I'm quite drawn to this, but I feel like I can't handle my emotions, which is what you were saying earlier, where I would withdraw for a while. But it really was the beginning of our coming back together. It just doesn't go like in the romance films, It's not necessarily going to be like that. But in that process, you got to deal with certain things that you still had outstanding. Yeah. And I really started the process of coming to reconnect with our personality, which if I hadn't have met him, I don't know if I would have done on earth. I was so opposed to my very nature. So it's actually a huge gift to start this process. And if you attract the other half of you into your life, which you will if you're sincere about this, it's a gift to them that you want who the whole soul is. I feel immense gratitude to Jesus for having done that before we met. It's been my liberation in so many ways. Yeah.
What kept me going for 5 years living by myself was the knowledge that any work I did on myself would mean that Mary wouldn't have to put up with an error in me when I met her. Does that make sense? Yep. So I got to the stage of going, okay, this is challenging. I've got to deal with some other things here and another thing here and another thing here. But everything I do is not just for my own sake. It's for hers too. And I also changed my life during that time I was alone to thinking things like, okay, I could connect to my personality and know where I would like to live. If Mary's my soulmate, she'd probably like to live in the same place, right? So I go and find a place, buy it, change it, so that Mary can live there. Right? This was all without meeting her, because I feel like if her personality is the same as mine, she will enjoy it. She will like what I've chosen, and as long as I'm doing what I feel is our personality in nature, she will also come to enjoy it as well. So it means that so part of my romantic feelings towards Mary is sooner or later I'm going to meet her. Part of it is having the feeling that she will like an environment that I create for her. Does that make sense? So I didn't only create it for myself, but I created it for her. I chose it for what I felt would be good for her and good for me, good for us both. Does that make sense? So I wasn't just considering what I would like. I was also considering what I felt she would like. Now, during that process, people said, you're living like 40 k's away from everywhere, 250 k's away from the nearest sort of city. What if Mary wants to be in the city? And I said, she won't want to be in the city. She's the same as me. She won't want that. Now, some of you might be the opposite. That your soulmate might like the city just like you do, right? In the spirit world, there's cities. People live in them because they like it. Mary and I don't. We never have. And all through from the first century, we never really have liked cities very much. So it's not a part of our personality, right? We're attracted to people, but not to places very much. And I knew Mary would feel that way, that you want a place of solitude and time where you could get to know each other better and time where you can work through your feelings. And I knew that's what Mary would want, even before I met her, because that's what I wanted. And I recognised that in myself. That's what I wanted. So, that's what I did. So I'm looking at things. I'm not looking at things for myself. I'm not looking at what I want to get for myself. I'm looking at what for both of us is going to be the best possible thing.
You're talking about making room for the other
Making
half.
room for Mary in my life. You don't build a house that's got one bedroom and say you've made room for your soulmate. You build a house with more than one bedroom because you're going to need two at least, right? There's good reasons why you're going to need two. You might not be sleeping together for years on end, right? So you're going to need two bedrooms. And you might even need, I actually built two completely separate tents. Like, not this big, not quite as this big, but
Similar.
not a yurt, like a circular thing, but it was a square thing. I built two of them knowing that Mary would probably want some time in one of them.
Because if you're in this process, you need time. You need time to work on those things. Yeah.
And I knew that time might be years. So why wouldn't I get it ready? So that Mary could have time alone and time to discover herself and time to work out who she is and no pressure from me. No sexual pressure from me, no emotional pressure from me, no spiritual pressure from me. She needs to work through, remember I said each half of the soul needs to discover these things for themselves, not because they're pressured by the other half. So I just want to create a space where Mary can do that for herself. So for long periods of time we didn't even have a relationship really even. Yeah? We lived on the same property without really having a relationship. Sometimes Mary didn't want to see me for a month or longer, sometimes 6 months, right? Because she was working through things and she felt that I would just influence her and she wouldn't be able to make her own decision and choice. You follow? And so she needed to make her own decision and choice. I can't say, let's mind control you and let's control you emotionally and let's control you physically and let's put you in the same space as me and then at the same time say I'm giving her free will. That I'm enabling her free will. I'm not. I'm controlling her life. I see a lot of men doing this in particular and a lot of so-called soulmate relationships beginning this way where one's controlling the other, but it's not ever going to be good, right? The idea is to give the person freedom to make their own decisions, their own choices, engage their own longings. Yeah? And once they do that, then they'll either recognise you as the other half or not. But if they go through that process and they feel you're not, then it's highly likely you've been in addiction the whole time. Because they're the other half of you. If they go through these actual processes and do it sincerely, they'll recognise you as much as you recognise them. So if they don't, it means one of you is not right? Yeah. So, and we see that a lot too, where people think, oh, he's my soulmate, and they don't do this work. And instead what they do is put a whole heap of pressure on the other party, only for the other party to do the actual work, and then realise he's not my soulmate at all. He's just been a pushy, demanding, pain in the neck male the entire time, bossing me around, thinking he's God rather than recognising God's authority, and I don't want anything to do with him. But we've seen that happen too, where the guy hears divine truth, says you're my soulmate, forces the girl into this whole process, pushing her, only for her to actually engage the process more sincerely than him. And then she goes, you're not my soulmate at all. What am I doing here? Right? Which is fair enough, right? This is how it should happen. She should work that out. But I don't see many people, when it comes to a soulmate relationship, I don't see many people actually loving the other half of themselves very much. To love them, you've got to enable their desires, enable their personality, enable their life. If Mary has longings, she wants to do whatever she wants to do. If I love her, part of my love for her will be assisting her to do those things, whether I like it or not. And then if I didn't like it, I'd have to question, why don't I like it? If we're half of each other, why don't I like what she likes? There's got to be something going on there. If what she likes is pure and what she likes is loving and what she likes is in harmony with truth, and she's dealt with a lot of her addictions and she's engaging her personality in what she likes and I don't like it, then there's something going on with me. Like, do I want power over her? Do I want control of her? Do I want to push her and influence her life? What's really going on for me as to why I'm doing those things? You see, if you're really loving God's standard of love, which remember we said was the actual subject of our discussion, then you will love from the perspective of you want to enable the person to come to their own choices, their own decisions, not to influence those decisions. If every time Mary wanted to talk to me, I let her talk to me. No matter how hurt I felt, no matter how upset I was, she could talk to me. Right? So every time she could talk to me. If she wanted to talk for 3 days, we talked for 3 days. Every day. Right? Why wouldn't you do that? If you really care about the person, love the person, why wouldn't you let that happen? If she wanted to be angry with me for a week, she was allowed to be angry with me for a week. If that's what she wanted.
Yeah, but it's not the same as dumping that anger on you.
No, I never let her dump it on me. It was like, Mary wants to yell and scream at me directly. I'll put up with it for an hour or two. Right? I'll just wait for her to exhaust herself a bit. But then, when I can get a word in edgeways, I say, I don't deserve this. This is a feeling you need to own more. Because you're angry, you want power over it, own it more. It's not my fault. Right? Unless, of course, I've been treating her badly, then it is my fault. I need to do something about it. Right? If I treat her unlovingly and she's yelling at me about it, I go, yeah, I'll do something about it. Right? And then, of course, as time goes on, the love between you grows and there's less fighting, less arguments, less anger, and in the end, like, you get to the stage where there's none. No anger, no fighting, no disagreement on any subject at all. And it's not because you've been forced into it, it's because you've both arrived at the same place because you've engaged the process. Not because one of you has forced the other to make those changes or those decisions. Make sense? So, this is how you handle him. You understand? Now, I've seen many spirits handle their soulmates for 1,000 years this way. Like, they knew who their soulmate was 1,000 years ago, and from the time they knew, they handled their soulmate with this very gentle, very accepting, allowing their soulmate to make choices, decisions of their own. Whenever the soulmate wanted to talk to them, they went to talk to them. And I've seen, like, the person you know as Nero, her soulmate did it for, His soulmate, did it for 1,900 years. Treated her soulmate like this. Before he recognised that she was his soulmate. He come to his own realisation. And she did that for 1,900 years. That's love, right? Isn't that? That's like love. to be able to keep engaging, keep talking, keep allowing, keep for that period of time. Now that experience is actually in the Paget messages, if you ever get to read those. You'll read them. They're spirit channeled messages where he told of his experience. Yeah. Now, why have I laboured on this a bit? It's because it's very important for your future to understand that you are half of yourself, not your whole self. It's very important for you to understand that when you're very selfish and you start thinking that you're just yourself without somebody else, you are actually completely closing yourself off to the experience of meeting the other half of yourself. It's also very important to understand that God's design is that for these two halves to become one, and that's when you're going to experience the most bliss you can as a soul through that process. It's also very important to understand that God wants a relationship with your whole soul, and God knows you're only one half. He created you as one half, as you are now. You are one half. The whole soul is what he wants a relationship with, not just your half. Right? So these are important realizations to have. And as you have them, you will find sexual attraction to everybody else completely disappears. You won't be sexually attracted to another single person for the rest of your existence. Now, for a lot of you, that's a pretty scary thought, right? For me, it's not a scary thought at all, right? You will find yourself only attracted to the other half. In fact, God designed you to not have a sexual attraction. He designed you to have a soulmate attraction, which often gets expressed as a sexual attraction in error. Right? Unfortunately, nowadays too, there's so many people who don't even understand their own sexual attraction because they haven't engaged their personality for lots of reasons. And so they think that they are attracted to both men and women, for example. It's not how God designed it. You are either attracted to a man or attracted to a woman at the soul level. There are many, many influences on earth to cause you to think differently and to feel differently, and those all would need to be addressed as a part of this process. But God's design is that you are designed to be attracted to your mate. And it's a great thing.
It is.
It's a great thing. Once you connect to your mate and you start developing that relationship, the more intense the relationship becomes, you start realizing there is no way you could ever have such intensity with anybody else, on all matters. Like, remember, spiritual matters, emotional matters, sexual matters, physical matters. You're going to end up, if you're in harmony with God, coming towards God, you're going to end up with the same personality expression of those matters. So the more Mary and I progress towards each other, the more we become like each other. Yeah. And it's beautiful. Far more beautiful. Like Mary and I have experienced the union state. Far more beautiful than anyone on earth can ever imagine. Why would you want anything else? It doesn't make sense to want anything else. Yeah. But I would encourage you to begin the process through this process. Yes? Now, does that answer most of your question?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Beautiful.
You can see the big problem is going to be firstly sorting yourself out, and then once you have, or once you think you have, because there's a lot of things I thought I sorted out, but when I met Mary I realised I haven't sorted them out, and I had to go back over them again to sort them out. But one of the things it took me to sort out was that I'm going to love her no matter what she chooses to do, even if she chooses to reject me on every level. So there's one point where Mary rejected me on absolutely every level. Spiritually rejected me, emotionally rejected me, sexually rejected me, physically rejected me. And then I realised, wow, I'm pretty changed by that. You know, like I cried for nearly 9 weeks, every day, the whole day, 9 weeks. It took me to sort that out. After 9 weeks of tantruming, a couple of days of dealing with an emotion, which is what happened, I go, that's gone now. And then at the same time, I got this thought, she's going to contact me again now. Without me contacting her, I knew she would contact me again. 2 days later, Mary contacted me. Right? Because I had stuff. I had to deal with stuff that was...
It's a demand, really, wasn't it?
It was a demand. It was a demand that Mary loves me. I'd been building my life around meeting her, and then I meet her, she doesn't want me. Like, I had some stuff. Had to feel the stuff. Had to go through the emotions. Had to work my way through them in a proper, sincere manner. It took me 9 weeks to get sincere, because that was the tantrum, crying every day. And then it took me a couple of days of actually sincerely processing some fundamental emotions about what our relationship was really meant to be like. And then the change happened. And once the change happened, then I knew Mary would contact me, and I wouldn't need to badger her, and I wouldn't need to pressure her or anything like that. I knew she would contact me. And I didn't know what state she would be in when she contacted me, whether she'd be angry with me or upset with me, or I didn't know. But I knew it would happen, and I'd just handle it because I was more loving now. I could handle it. Make sense? Yeah. So it's very important you go through that.
What about the sins? Can your sins also make your distance? That's addictions.
All of your addictions are sins, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So whenever we talk about addictions, I know it's a nice, kind way of saying sin. That's what it is. You understand? Yeah.
So you're aware then if you're doing something good. That's because you were talking before about sin and aware.
Aware.
Reward. Sorry. Reward.
Oh, reward. Yes. Yeah.
So
When you get rid of your addictions, you're rewarded for that. God rewards you through the law for getting rid of your addictions because you're getting rid of your sins. Yeah, so you are rewarded, but see, not in the way a lot of people want to be rewarded. So that's an issue. So an example, let's say one of my addictions, which is a sin, is a need to have everybody like me. Now, a lot of people on earth would say, of course you want everybody to like you. I go, it's a silly thing to expect, because there's 8 billion people on the planet. Most of them don't even know you. So how can they like you? And then even if they know you, they can have different opinions, different ideas, different nature, personality. How they might not like you, right? If you expect everybody to like you, you're going to act with everybody like, I want to earn you to like me. I want to get you to like me. I want to get you to like me. And in the process of doing this, you're going to sin a lot, getting people liking you. And not only that, you're going to get away from your personality a lot. So you're going to stop yourself being yourself so that other people like you. And what's that going to do? It's going to just create more of a fission, a block between the two of you, right? Yeah. So it makes sense, doesn't it, that you're going to have to deal with your sin, your addictions or your sins. Yeah. They are all felt emotionally, so you're going to have to process through some emotion. A lot of your false beliefs are also sins. So the belief in reincarnation, that's a sin, actually. It's going to have its own detrimental effect on your life, believing that. The belief that Jesus saves you by sacrificing his blood, he saves you from your sins. That's a false belief too. You're going to have to get rid of that. It's a sin to believe that, actually, from God's perspective. But it's even a sin to believe that God's angry, because he's not angry. So it's a sin to believe that. There's a whole heap of things that are sins that are constructed from beliefs, emotions, and your addictions.
But you're right, getting rid of your sins, part of the reward is coming to know who your soulmate is.
Yeah. That's one of the many side effects, I suppose you could call it, of doing these things. Yeah. So it's wonderful, eh? So I think it's around our time for finishing, isn't it? probably well after.
It's 20 past 4.
20 past 4.
Jesus is on fire, so you want to keep going. But
No,
I think everyone else is dropping.
Everyone's dropping.
Yeah.
Everyone's sort of tired. I understand that. So what we'll do tomorrow, just to let you know what we'll do tomorrow, is we'll do this more. We'll answer more of these questions. Remember, we want to focus on God's standards of love and through this process. So God's standard of love is, find your soulmate. That's a personal standard of God's. Find your soulmate, learn how to love them is a part of God's standard of love. But we want to focus on God's standards when it comes to other aspects of our life, particularly our sins and things like that as well. So let's try and do some of that tomorrow.
So
what we notice is many of you want to hear good things, but you don't want to hear facts about some bad things.
The devil exists or not?
Sorry?
The devil.
No.
The evil. There's no evil.
There is evil, but the devil doesn't
So
exist.
the evil, who is
But you need the
responsible for the
micro.
evil?
Can we have the microphone?
Sure.
Yeah. But we can answer that question tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah?
Is it right?
Yeah, because it's a very important question. A lot of people in life believe in the devil, and they also blame the devil for their own actions.
No, it's just by seeing, observing the evil in the world.
Oh,
One
that's what I mean,
cannot
Dave.
believe in evil anymore.
Well, I believe in evil.
Well, we're seeing it.
We're seeing it all.
Our eyes,
Yeah.
big time.
But if you're going to make comments, you need to back the mic, you see. Yeah. But because otherwise nobody else is going to hear it. But it's something we can answer tomorrow. It's one of the questions.
in fact, lots of you had your hands up before the soulmate questions, so please remember your questions.
Yeah.
Because we can answer them
We'll try
tomorrow.
to get around to them tomorrow. All right? If you decide to come tomorrow.
If you decide to come out.
And also, by the way, you're allowed to not come tomorrow.
We're not offended,
We're not offended.
promise. Do you want to start at 10 or 11 tomorrow?
What's the temperature going to be tomorrow? Has anyone
A
checked?
little cooler than today. A little.
Little cooler. Okay. Would you like to start at 10 rather than 11?
Yeah.
And maybe finish earlier? Is that... Finish earlier? No. Start earlier? Yes. That means I'm talking 6 hours rather than 5. Not that loving, maybe, right? Anyway, but yes, we can start earlier, and we don't know when we'll finish. Is the answer to that question, probably. Mary and I have to pack up after tomorrow because we're leaving. We have to pack up all of our gear and everything tomorrow evening. So we do probably want to finish by the latest at 4 o'clock, so we've got time afterwards to pack up and everything. In terms of, so we will start at 10. That the decision?
Yeah.
Everyone's okay with that? Good. And we'll focus on, again, doing the same thing as we've done today, which I think is pretty interesting, right? Yep, most of you seem pretty engaged. So we'll continue to do that. But if you feel like you don't want to hear any more, that's fine. Feel free to leave. And if you booked onto the system, just take yourself off of it.
Yeah, I don't know how that works now that the event is started.
Well, there's other people from last week who wanted to potentially come, isn't there?
There is.
And so if you don't want to come tomorrow,
Maybe if you can just let me know.
Let us
if you don't
know.
come in tomorrow. Email me or see me now.
Yeah,
and I
and
can
then
offer
we
a
can let
place
somebody
to
else
come.
come tomorrow, you
Yeah.
see. Yeah.
My email event@divinetruth.com. Yep.
And somebody's saying donations.
Yep.
There's a
every-
donation
yeah.
box, a red box just outside if you want to donate to us with money. If you want to do it via credit card or other thing, the website is just donation.divinetruth.com. And there's ways to do it via credit card and other things there. Bank account. All right. Yeah.
I see,
There isn't. Yeah. So just donate to general expenses or something like that. We'll sort it out.
Yeah, you can put a comment if you want.
Yeah. That's fine. Thank you, guys. See you tomorrow.